Hey, Ian. We have a client who's super discouraged because he feels like he can't compete with all the wealthy folks in the marketplace. Think we could come up with some ideas to help him out?
I got some strategies in my back pocket that we can help him to compete and get down with the wealthy.
Awesome. Let's go.
All right, let's go grab some coffee.
So, Ian, we hear a lot in the news about how the wealthy have access to a lot of advantages that the rest of us don't in a lot of different areas of life. I kind of wanted to take a deeper dive into how some of our wealthier or higher net worth clients are able to leverage advantages that your average real estate client might not know about.
So the interesting thing about and we have the benefit of, our brand that we've built. We find that what we do speaks to all consumers. We find people who are first-time buyers, entry level, and we work with multi-million-dollar clients buying ultra-luxury homes. And when we first started working, our business was growing. We first started working with these ultra-luxury clients. It introduced us to a whole world of strategies and things that those people use. Interestingly enough, sometimes we're now introducing people who maybe are new money. They sold a company or they had large amounts of stock come their way, and they don't even have these strategies because they're not from a generational, family with generational wealth that has already known all these strategies. But there's kind of three main things that we see. The wealthy people with a lot of money will use the leverage relationships, big banking relationships, where and honestly, some of the big banks, they have, even as far as like what's the bane of our existence in acquiring mortgages, underwriters. Sometimes they have their own underwriters. They can get them better rates by their portfolios. They can get basically an entire separate subset that they have in mortgages. Then the second piece is the wealthy don't really sell anything. They buy. They'll sell very little, or they'll sell strategically, but they acquire loans against assets. And we'll talk further about that in a little bit. But they'll basically leverage. They'll borrow the money at very low interest rates versus taking an asset and selling it into cash and then using the cash. And the third thing, which kind of sounds contrary to what I just said, is the wealthy, because a lot of times they still end up generating a lot of cash that may not have been reinvested yet. Is we've actually had clientele that are able to buy something cash, but then they never keep it in cash. They'll usually then acquire the mortgage after the fact, but they'll use the cash as the way to be competitive. So they'll go in, buy a house cash, and then finance it on the back end, so that they could beat out the other offers, win the house, but then they still get to take advantage of the low interest rates and the debt.
So I know that a lot of these are strategies that are used by folks that have wealth or generational wealth, but I know that there are some of them that are also available and accessible to folks who may not know that they qualify. So what are some of the top strategies that our wealthy clients use that are still accessible to a lot of our other clients?
So funny thing, and if you're watching, don't click away if you don't think you're wealthy and can get these strategies, because I'm about to give you the keys to how we can help our clients who are just up and coming and building their wealth. And the first one is starting a banking relationship at a higher level. So most banks have, and we provide our clients, and we keep them up to date because they do change them. But most banks will give mortgage rate discounts for transferring money over to them. And in some of the financial institutions we work with that in their investment divisions, because we serve Silicon Valley and the adjacent coastlines, a lot of our clients have a lot of stock, and sometimes that stock they don't want to sell it. They're not going to liquidate it to buy the house, but simply by whether it's in one institution and moving it to the other institution, simply just by making a transfer of that money. Let's just say a client has $200,000 in stock and they just move it over to the institution. Sometimes just by transferring that stock, and again, nothing changes with the portfolio, they're just housing a different institution, they can get a nice drop in the interest rate. Again, something that would only typically be available to wealthy. The second thing we see, or second way we leverage it, is that cash advantage we talked about, where some wealthy can buy something cash and they get a mortgage on the back end. We work with multiple lenders now. Some of them we have exclusive relationships with, or they work with very limited amounts of agents. So not every realtor has access to these programs. But they'll actually make a cash offer on the client's behalf for a small fee. But in a highly competitive market where the client may have been beaten out multiple times by cash, now they can compete at the cash level. And as we like to talk about, that escalator curve where the prices are continually going up in the straight line, simply by being able to win and get the house, in a few months from now, that completely takes away the small fee that it costs to do the cash offer program. And then the third piece, which is one that I don't really know. I know very few agents who are realtors who I've ever seen using this strategy, but we work with a number of financial institutions now who can essentially get our clients a line of credit against their stock. So what happens is we have clients who may have like a lot of, sometimes significant amounts of money in Apple stock, Google stock, Facebook stock, basically these blue chip tech stocks, but the stocks perform very well, and our clients don't want to sell the stock to buy the house, right? So they need to acquire a down payment. They create these lines of credits on your stock portfolio, and I know that like most institutions look very favorable upon like Apple stock and Google stock because the trajectory on those stocks is that they'll just continue to appreciate. So people can get a significant line of credit against that, and it's at a very low interest rate. So we've had clients basically acquire entire down payments on $2 million houses or more. They've been able to pull the entire down payment without selling a single share of stock at a very low interest rate. And then, of course, they acquire a mortgage for the rest, oftentimes leveraging the previous strategies so you can compound these strategies. And sometimes we have clients use all three strategies. They do the cash offer, they get the down payment from an equity line against the stock, and when the mortgage is done at the end, they're actually using a banking relationship to get a lower mortgage rate. So you can actually combine all three of those strategies without even being ultra wealthy. You just have to be aware of these products, and it takes a little bit of pre-strategizing to get them going.
Awesome. So I know that we specialize in a lot of the programs that are available in our area, in the Silicon Valley, and the adjacent coastline, through Santa Cruz, Monterey, all those areas. What would you say to our folks who are in other parts of the country where they are not, they don't have that kind of relationship yet? How would you recommend they go forward?
The beauty of everything we just talked about is, again, most of these strategies actually exist in most places. Again, we talk about this a lot. When someone comes to me and says, hey, I would like to leverage that strategy, but I'm in Texas, or I'm in Florida, or I'm in Tennessee, then I would recommend, what I would first do is find them an area expert. We have relationships all over the country, and we refer to people in all different markets to get them the best of the best in the area. At the same time, we can still recommend you to the financial institutions, or say, hey, why don't you talk to these financial institutions? Here's some resources. So we've often given resources for some of these products and things, and ways to leverage these to people who aren't necessarily going to buy or sell a home with us, but we can still point them in the right direction. And then, of course, you need your local area expert. So we're qualified to give a lot of general advice and a lot of information about the real estate market in general. But of course, we don't know the little micro nuances of every market all across the country. So we'll recommend people, of course, have your area expert who can tell you exactly what's going on in your local market. But when a lot of these strategies are available to anybody in any market, it's just like as many here in the Silicon Valley and the surrounding areas in California, usually things happen here first. We're a lot of times at the forefront, but that doesn't mean these strategies can't be taken to other markets.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Ian. Again, as always, like, share, subscribe, and if you got something out of this. And I'm Laura Batra.
And I'm Ian Batra.
And this was Coffee Talk.